Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could teach the gullible to never be so comfortable with lies they eat like comfort food? To disregard the bogus claims and pseudoscientific claims. Can you imagine just how much indeed the world would change? No more political predators playing on the populace with ilkas and plots to shift and kill metropolis. No more villains with the title in the Bible holding phony temper Bibles like the stuff they teach is vital. Imagine it was normal to have to prove a claim you make. And folks really feel ashamed expressing content that was fake. It's not to say we never make mistakes. It's just to say we go out of our way to show the evidence it takes.
Remain skeptical while you travel the road. The reason stay strapped with logic and fast. That's what it is, yo. Keep reality intact to help the truth grow. Question every claim, especially the ones you believe in. Remain skeptical while you travel the road. The reason.
Hi, welcome to Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century. I'm Rob Penczak.
And I'm Larry Mendoza.
We are joined by flat earther Arn Ra. We're going to get into the details of this. So we are really privileged today to be joined by Arn Ra. He actually did the show over the last couple of months, and now he's here in DC live. And I think, why don't we start with this? You were at a conference in North Carolina speaking, said it was a fantastic conference, and yet you decided that you had to fly out of there, knowing that you were going to get into Baltimore, knowing you then had at least an hour ride to try to get to just the tail end of the Science March, which you might or might not make. Yep. Why was it so important for you to do that? Why, what's so key about that march?
Well, I believe it. I believe in the movement so much. I mean, I had to represent. I was asked to speak in Dallas at the march there, but I'm already going to be speaking at a conference in North Carolina. So if I'm going to have to fly anywhere, I may as well fly to DC and be involved in the biggest one. And it's frustrating that it was difficult to find a number of flights or get a flight that could land me in the right airport at the right time. That was so hard to do. And then, of course, with the traffic and the issues with the taxis and everything, I knew it was going to be, at the very best, I would get there right as anything. But I needed to be present. I needed to be able to take part in this however I could. And so I contacted all of the local people in the area just so that I can get a chance to share my voice as part of this movement, even if I can't get out and walk on the streets because I'm in an airplane at that moment. I mean, I've dedicated my career as an activist to promoting science and skepticism and secular thinking and all of this. I want to encourage this, and I'm really against what the current administration and what our culture is currently going through. Mm-hmm. I mean, you mentioned me as you described me as a flat earther, and I want to bring this up. I mean, you guys were asking, how is it possible that we have this whole flat earth movement? And a lot of it is just a joke. For a lot of these people, this is just a scam that they're doing. But there's a lot of people that are buying into this. Why? Right? How is it possible to believe in a flat earth in the 21st century? Mm-hmm. Right? Well, here's what's happening. You have religion is in a general state of decline, statistically, across the board, right? Throughout the United States. In every state, religion is in decline. Atheism is on the rise in every state, statistically. But at the same time, creationism is on the rise. Now, how is it possible for religion to be in decline and creationism to be on the rise? Because what you've got is you've got people that, let's say once upon a time, like when I was a little boy, for example, there was everybody seemed to accept that science is a demonstrable fact. You'd be a fool to deny science, but at the same time, everybody had this idea that when you die, your soul goes somewhere. Mm-hmm. So like everybody had this dual kind of a belief system. And what is happening now is you have people that are walking away from religion entirely, which is fine, but you've also got people that are walking away from science entirely, because creationism isn't just religion. Creationism is a form of religious extremism, requiring a degree of denial of reality. They have to deny an awful lot in order to do their apologetics, to defend their belief system. So they're walking away from science entirely, and it's not just them. It's not just evolution that they're walking away from. They're walking away from medical science. Mm-hmm. We've got dozens of families now every year that are finally being jailed.
Right, they're finally being jailed. Yeah.
For not giving their children medical care, for praying their diseases away or what have you. And then you have people that are denying other aspects of science as well. And this is where you get this flat earth thing. I have met people who believe that the earth is the biggest thing in the universe, that the sun and the moon are both the same size as all of the other planets. They're all the same size. And my grandmother, for example, believed in this concentric sphere kind of concept where you have the earth as the first thing that was ever created.
Right.
Took God 4 days to work on this.
And it was at the center. It's the center.
He just sort of spat out 70 jillion galaxies in every direction all at once as a sneeze.
Is that his leftover paint or something? You know,
Yeah, just
it's leftover, yeah.
oh, there's the rest of the cosmos. One single gesture, right? And then continues to work on this rock for 2 more days. And this is because obviously it's an Earth-centered view, right? They have no idea what's really going on, nor care to know what's going on outside of our atmosphere, right? They have a very limited scope. I mean, so a lot of people believe that really there are some who we've heard from, like Shaquille O'Neal, who really do believe that the Earth is flat. And I've been trying to get a flat Earth advocate to get on my podcast and just to have a real life conversation with me, unedited in real time. But nobody will take me up on that.
Anybody who's watching that's a flat earther, this is a direct, invitation.
And it's almost easy to make fun of the flat Earth and who cares about the fringe. But then you look at it with something that should be just as fringe with Jenny McCarthy and Jim Carrey with anti-vax, and then it starts to spill back into.
What's dangerous is not just the fact that there's people that believe that. What's dangerous is celebrities that have a following of thousands.
Well, you remember The View, the TV show The View?
Yeah.
I mean, there was a host on there one time that they brought up the flat Earth thing. I mean, and there was this one host that was on the show at that time who said that she didn't know whether the Earth is flat or round. What you don't know?
We don't have enough evidence. We need more studies.
How can you not know? I mean, you're being laughed at right now on public TV. Right. You're the odd man out, right? You're the only one that's holding that. Well, maybe there's a possibility that absolutely everybody on the planet is wrong that knows anything, right? And so she comes up with this defensive excuse that she couldn't know this thing because she's too busy, meeting her responsibilities to feed her child. Really? Was that your excuse in the 4th grade in geography class when they had a globe sitting there? Was, I'm too busy feeding the child that I'm going to have in 20 years than to look at this, what's this round thing with these weird shapes on it?
I don't have time to learn.
Yes.
Well, then you can jump into, talk about the difference between, like a skeptic, we want to be able to say, I don't know. I'll look into it. Talk about the difference between a skeptic and a contrarian, because then it spills past anti-vax to anti-climate change, anti-evolution, anti-everything.
I didn't even mention the climate change issue.
So dive into it. No, so really talk about how contrarians like to use some of the language from critical thinking to deny reality and ignore it.
Well, as far as the climate change thing, this is just an inability to understand things at a system-wide level, which is a big problem for a lot of people. I mean, we understand that a lot of these evangelicals statistically do have difficulty understanding system-wide, whether it's racism or population mechanics. This is why they think that evolution is a matter of one thing turning into another thing, like Pokemon, which of course it's not like that. I have to explain to people, well, look at how languages evolved, right? We all know that French and Spanish and Romanian are all derived from Latin, as is Italian.
As is Italian, right.
And so you have cladogenesis for these 3 languages, and then you have anagenesis for Italian. Then I have to explain the differences for these. So you never, ever had the first guy who spoke French.
Right.
Which, as the evangelicals would put it, you suddenly have this guy who speaks French and everybody else is speaking Latin, and he has to go find a woman who speaks French so he can get married to her. Yeah, obviously, evolution doesn't work that way. The languages don't work that way. And when they understand the evolution of language, they realize that there's these small transitions. And if you read like Don Quixote, for example, in the original version, that's not yet Spanish, but neither is it Latin anymore. It's a transitional. It's a transitional. Yes, exactly.
A transitional fossil of.
And so here we have an intermediate stage where people who speak Latin and people who speak Spanish could still communicate with each other. Various degrees of communication. It becomes harder and harder to communicate to distinguish.
A prime example of that is you look at any country with any language, and it varies greatly depending on a country, but you have everything from dialects to, like in the Philippines, for example. I mean, the different dialects are almost a different language from island to island, from region to region. You got the main, Tagalog, which is the main national, but you go to the Pangasinan region, and it's all different, but it's all a derivative of Tagalog, which in and of itself was a derivative of Spanish and the Polynesian or the Pacific.
Well, now if you're going to get into hybridization, now you're just going to confuse people.
But I'm saying is over time, depending on the situation, things start to evolve into what they are, what we know as today. But that's where I think people have a hard time grasping concepts of anything evolving. It's more like this is this.
I have to, if people want to keep things the way they were, back in the good old days that were never good for anybody other than white, Christian, heterosexual men, and otherwise it wasn't that good for pretty much anybody else. But you have to look at this country, 500 years ago, it was a lot less white than it is now. And it doesn't matter what legislation you want to employ. It really doesn't. The demographics are going to change, right? Even if we could remove every other ethnicity from this country and have it just be good old white boys, just the population of white people 100, 200, 300 years from now are going to be visually different than we are now. Nothing in biology is completely static, unless you're a raccoon.
Apparently raccoons are everywhere and they don't change ever.
Yeah. We discussed how raccoons have a very slow mutation rate. They have a very low evolution rate, as some species actually evolve faster or slower than others.
All depends on the selective pressures, and if it works, why change?
But it's not just selective pressures, it's also mutation rates.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, right.
So raccoons are surprisingly resilient. They're very resistant to evolutionary change, but we humans are not. Right? I mean, if you were to look at movies that were released at the time that they first came out with talkies, you'll discover that people had an accent then that they don't have anymore, that doesn't exist anymore. Right? And this is not just local dialects, it's also within time, so it's temporal as well. Things are going to keep changing. We've got all kinds of future elements that are coming our way that we're not preparing for, we're not aware of, because we're trying to go back to this idyllic Mayberry RFD kind of thing from the Andy Griffith Show.
Right.
That's going backwards. We need to brace for what's coming.
Let's go ahead and take a quick break, because we do got to come back. We'll come back with that thought, so hold that thought right there. But we'll continue here after we go to a quick break.
When I was younger, I didn't want to admit I had a serious disease. Because of my diabetes, I lost the sight in my left eye. Misconceptions continue to surround this monster public health issue. But the simple truth is, diabetes can often be prevented and complications avoided. You're not alone. Understand the realities of diabetes and know that you can manage it and lead a full, active life.
There's an alarming trend in the world today. Everywhere you go, people are saying that cinema is dead. But cinema is not dead. My name is Count Simon Gauntlet, and on my television program, Count Gauntlet's Horrors from the Public Domain, I make it my mission to resurrect forgotten film classics. I promise to dredge the sewers and ford the stagnant streams of film history to ensure that no film is truly lost to the ages. Count Gauntlet and FPA. Keeping cinema alive! Alive! Alive!
Well, even though Joseph's been gone 18 months, we've made the decision to keep all his things as they were when he was here last. I finally just packed his toothbrush away like 6 months ago. It had been sitting on the counter in the bathroom. And I was cleaning the bathroom one day and I just thought, okay, it's time to put the toothbrush in the medicine cabinet.
So, I just moved in with his family, and it's embarrassing. The little one, he likes to go outside and crawl around in the giant litter box. I don't know what he's doing. I mean, I was born and I knew how to use the litter box. Look at that. That's disgusting. Oh, poop already. You're making me nervous. Oh, okay, I can't look at this anymore. I really hope he grows out of this, for his sake.
This is Richard Dawkins. Doing commercials is unfamiliar territory for me, but I'm inviting you to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, on Fairfax Public Access every Sunday. Each week, the hosts tackle wishful thinking, religion, pseudoscience, and the harm they cause, with a combination of facts, humor, and community involvement. They challenge believers to defend their faith and give you, the skeptic, a voice. With live call-ins for viewers and streaming on the World Wide Web, there's never a dull moment. Don't wait. Look at them now on Facebook and YouTube. And remember to watch Road to Reason, a skeptic's guide to the 21st century, or there'll be hell to pay.
All right, welcome back. We're going to jump in with a couple announcements here because I have the feeling we're going to run straight to the end until we're out of time. So first thing I want to mention is that Jules is a writer, activist, social critic, and commentator based in Texas. He uses skepticism and critical thinking to explore matters of race, religion, and politics. He's going to be on a mini tour of the Southeast on May 25th through 28th, stopping in Wilmington, North Carolina, Myrtle Beach, and then ending up in Richmond, Virginia, with us at Saved by Science, Richmond Humanist, and Richmond Reason and Naturalism Association are putting that on. We want to thank Candace Gorham for playing a great role in bringing him to us. He's going to be coming on Road to Reason also on May 14th with Stephanie Guttermson and Tiffany Harding. So we appreciate it. We're excited to see him. We're also going to have another Saved by Science program in Richmond on sort of the science behind mental health. That's going to involve Andy Thompson, Mark Reimers, Candace Gorham, and Arnold Woodruff. So if you're interested in kind of learning more about that and you're in the Richmond area, look out Saved by Science and we'll have some information on both those programs.
Yeah, that's a good program. Rob here puts that together with the humanists, the Richmond Humanists, and it's a fantastic, fantastic talk. So if you are in the area in Richmond, Virginia, highly recommend you go to that one.
Okay. Thank you. And that was I may have said 14th. It's actually May 13th is going to be the program on mental health, the day before Mother's Day. We wanted to mention that Arn will be available if you want to see him again, because you don't get enough today. He's going to be doing the Nondescript Atheist radio show out of Fairfax Public Access, and that will be viewable if you go to the Fairfax website on Thursday evening. It's going to be live streamed, recorded today, and then live streamed at that point. So please check that out also. All right. Now, you had a conversation with David Tamayo, president of Hispanic American Freethinkers, earlier today, and I don't have the exact quote, but he said something to the effect of, we can't afford to be racing back in the wrong direction as fast as humanly possible for the next 4 years. So why don't you jump back into that? That's kind of where you were starting to address some of the things that we're doing wrong. Now, can you dive into that?
Yeah, well, there's a number of things to consider. If you're going to have, you got to remember that when I was born, I'm like 54 now, so when I was born, the world population, global population, was like 3 billion something. 3 billion, not 7.
Yeah, right.
Right. So in the course of my grandmother's life, it was like, I don't know, it was like 1.5 billion or so when she was a little girl, and then in the course of her life, it doubled to where it went to 3 billion. That was for a 90-some-odd-year-old woman, right, in the population. But in my life, it's doubled twice. Mm-hmm. Right? And it's increasing at an exponential rate.
Exponential rate.
Now, this is something to consider, because if you're going to have 7 billion people, and we have technology such that the diseases that used to kill us don't, and people can survive things that would have taken us out. We have trauma centers now that can prolong lives, and there's ways around a lot of the things that led to mortality previously, and people should be living longer, although coincidentally they're not. You're going to think about the speed at which the population is going to continue to grow. So at 7 billion, 8 billion, 9 billion, we have to be so very efficient in how we produce and distribute food, for example, to say nothing of energy and resources other than that. But just look at food, right? We've already fished out the oceans to the point that we cannot right. sustain a population of that magnitude. So, once upon a time, I had an opportunity to go work in a canning facility in Alaska. They were paying a hell of a lot of money to go up and work in these canneries and just make a year's income in like 2 or 3 months. That wasn't inviting. So I thought I would do that, except that they suddenly changed the law because they noticed that they had more and more fishing boats every year. But even though they have more fishing boats, they're collectively bringing in less fish.
Right.
All of them together are bringing in less fish. So how is that happening? It's because we're fishing the oceans out faster than the oceans can replenish. We're going to have to be really, really efficient. We're really going to have to understand science.
But what if we just deregulate corporations instead? Will that get us there?
So much of my platform is to point out that the solution of so many of our problems is to do exactly the opposite of what the GOP and corporate America wants to do, and this includes, the establishment Democrats leading
right.
to the oligarchy that Bernie was talking about. Seriously, we can't allow corporations to run the company. There's no kind of morality that the free market will ever impose on corporations. What they're talking about, seriously, is they want to go back to where they have unregulated industries where you don't have regulations or unions or health care insurance. You don't have obligatory education anymore either, right? So what they want to do is go back to the good old days of 100 years ago, which was when the United States had the lowest standard of living that we've ever had in our history, where children were working barefoot in factories with no days off and no unions and no protections or regulations, either on our living conditions or on the companies themselves, so they could run away profits at the expense of the environment and every other thing.
And worker safety, and I mean, it just goes on and on. I mean,
exactly.
You know,
but if you look at individually the policies that they're trying to promote now, that's exactly what they're trying to go to. They're trying to go back to. That is as regressive as it is possible to be. There are some of us that held hope about the technologies that are currently available, that we can live cleaner and more efficiently. I mean, you know, I would have thought, you know, back when I was a kid, when it was everybody wanted a car with a great deal of horsepower, right? You know, I mean, that's every high school kid wanted a Camaro, right? And now we have electric cars. Here's the idea: electric car. When I was in high school, an electric car was something that went 50 miles an hour for 50 miles, and that's it. And now we have 700-800 horsepower electric cars. 700 or 800 horses, instant torque, right now gone. You know what I'd like to see Tesla do? I'd like to see Tesla market a four-wheel drive off-road truck to hand to a couple of good old boys out in the woods somewhere, and like, you guys just play with this for a while and give me a report about it. Think about it. If you've got something that's on monster truck tires and you're used to paying $1 a gallon. Or excuse me, not $1 a gallon, a gallon a mile, right? For your gas mileage on this four-wheel drive. And in order to get 400 horses out of this thing, all of the tinkering and tuning that you have to go through to say nothing of the gas mileage of this thing, that they have to pay for. And now you don't have to pay for that at all, because you just charge it up, and you're charging it on solar panels or a wind generator, because you live out in the boonies anyway, and you've got that instant torque.
Instant torque.
Right? So each tire has 200 horses. Now you don't even have to rev it up. These guys are never going to go back to fossil fuels again.
But that points to one of the really big problems, that there's two separate things that we have to fight. One is the level of scientific illiteracy and ignorance and just unawareness of things. And then there's the second one that you'd address with the corporatocracy. It's not in the big powers' financial interest to get their voting base to understand this. So how do we address that? Well,
the interests of the people at some point is going to have to override the interests of the profits of the companies. And you know, I consider myself more motivated by the needs of the people than I am for corporate profits. And so I wouldn't call myself a socialist. I don't think that word necessarily describes me, but I do sit on the left of that dividing line politically, because I want the middle class to be boldened. I want the major corporations to be restricted. I don't believe in monopolies. You know, I don't want every small business that anybody ever might want to start up is going to have to compete with Walmart. And it doesn't matter what you're trying to sell. You're always going to be, every kind of product is going to be competing with Walmart. And so Walmart ultimately ends up owning everything. And controlling legislation, because you know, corporations are people now. Well, that's and corporations can now buy votes. So we stopped being a representative democratic republic.
Well, that's, you know, I think, you know, dating back to the founding fathers when they drafted the Constitution, and even the reason why we have this mess of an electoral college to begin with was to protect the landowners, you know, the rich white landowners. And what's happening, we're seeing, you know, the groundwork was sort of laid out for that. And but what we're seeing now is just an evolution of that into, the first step is to make people corporations, make money a form of free speech. So in other words, it sounds great because, you know, free speech sounds is such a good word, but what's happening is the people that have the money get to speak more freely than the people who don't. Corporations are now people. They can use their money to basically, essentially what they're doing is set up the position to buy out congressmen. And if they don't have the money to buy the congressman, they just get, you know, as we're seeing with this administration, they put in, you know, Goldman Sachs in charge of the banks. They put in, you know, anti-environmentalists in charge of the EPA. You know, they put Ben Carson in charge of HUD. What do you think the goal of this is? This is not to promote what these you know, organizations are supposed to do, is to dismantle them.
Well, Bannon already made a public admission to that effect.
Yeah.
You know, that was the purpose of all these appointments was to destroy all of that. He said that his goal was to burn down the government.
Right.
And so they're seeking either some kind of anarchy, or obviously they want to substitute a very different rule than what the Founding Fathers had in mind. The Founding Fathers, I was surprised to find that in 1976, 1776, they were stating then that corporations not only already existed, but were already threatening and challenging the power of the state. And that they warned that the corporations were more dangerous than religious institutions. Right? And we know how they felt about religious institutions. The Founding Fathers were all against, you know, having religion have any kind of power of rule over law, because it's an automatic violation of human rights in every instance in practice in history. But the corporations were even worse, because how do you air a grievance when a corporation runs your company, or your country as a company? You can't go to the courts anymore, right? Because we're not a democracy, as a lot of people think. We are a republic because we're based on law, and we're adhering to the Constitution. And so we have to have our laws in accordance with that. And if it doesn't work or reward profits, then it doesn't matter, because it still needs to adhere to the Constitution. But with a company, it wouldn't work that way. And if we become a corporatocracy, if profits are all that matter, then you're not going to have human rights. And the first of those that is going away, as we've been seeing in the last few months, even before Trump was elected, every provision of the First Amendment, not just the prohibition and establishment of religion, but also freedom of speech, the real freedom of speech, not the one that people think it is because of our privileged society, but the real one, the one that matters, the freedom to peaceably assemble. All of it. The freedom of the press, right? The press is now being demonized as being fake news, and anybody that is independent press is now being, criminalized as not being a real journalist. Right? So we had 2 reporters at Standing Rock that were facing 45-year prison sentences for reporting a story that wasn't popular from the corporate perspective. Now, fortunately, they were able to go to the courts and get that thrown out. But in just levying a 45-year felony prison sentence against a reporter for reporting a story, just the very fact that that even happened.
Just the threat of it, the way that it stifles other reporters. So this was, Amy Goodman of Democracy Now!, who's like one of the, just an amazing reporter. I think was protege of Bill Moyers, and she's very rare. Not very many people do what she's still doing in terms of, laying it on the line. Everybody else that's sort of marginal, or that does like our show, that does even more serious level funded shows, you have to think twice and 3 times before you put yourself and your family and that whole project at risk when people are going to start suing you. That's why the threat of lawsuits really works. Even if there's not a case, it's a really effective thing. And it's not an accident. It's just like the reason that the Bush administration, they had no problem hiding everything they wanted to. But when torture was on the table, they wanted that message out there for a reason. They want people to know that torture is somewhere in the cards if you want to resist the government.
It's part of the deck. I mean,
and we already have legislation against public assembly in various forms. Like if you attend a public demonstration somewhere and there's a federal agent undercover protecting somebody as a bodyguard or something, you aren't even aware that you are suddenly in violation of a law that you didn't think even should exist, constitutionally shouldn't exist, right? And then if, in some instances, I can't remember where it is, but if you organize a public protest, and someone at this protest in this one particular state, if it goes violent, if there's a violent confrontation as part of your protest, or it becomes, there's brought into your protest, you could lose your property because you're the organizer of that. And through circumstances you had no control or planning on, somehow gets violent or meets with a violent opposition. Suddenly that's your fault, and the state has seized your property. Who endorses that, right? Somehow this got passed in legislation.
Well, I think it's interesting this somehow, because this doesn't serve the mass public, whether you're conservative or liberal. It doesn't serve your interest. It serves the interest of a very narrow sliver of our country. And to go back to Bush, who brought so many of us into activism, just like Trump is doing now. He helped institute the free speech zones. So if you want to go protest at an event, you could do it as long as it wasn't effective, as long as you were shunted off to the side. And, I guess I'd like to hear your thoughts on the media's role in this. If people don't hear you, if you have a voice, but you're speaking to 50 people out of the 300 million plus in the United States, you have a voice, but it's not very effective. Whereas if you have the money, like Larry said, now you have a big voice. How do we get past that? What do we need to do in terms of media or outreach or the internet?
Well, a good illustration of that is I remember several months ago, back in September, I think it was, you and I had this conversation where I brought up this thing about Standing Rock, and you didn't even know that there was a Standing Rock.
Right, first out, yep.
Yeah, and when I'm telling the story, I remember you thinking, this sounds like a conspiracy theory thing. How could all of this be going on and nobody knows about it? How could the state of North Dakota have...
Well, I didn't quite think it was that, but I wanted, like, since everything now, you have to double check everything, and we both do.
And so when I mentioned that North Dakota has authorized the use of weaponized drones against its own people, that sounds like a preposterous thing to say. Nobody would allow that to happen, certainly not. But it did,
but it did.
Right? But you need to verify it. And why do we need to verify it? Because if something like this is going on the scale that it was going on, well, we'd all know about it, right? Because the news would all be reporting it. But now we know the news was not reporting that. It was actively avoiding that. That's why, I mean, when I took my podcast, I had to drive 3,000 miles so that I could go to Standing Rock and report on it live. Because at the time, when I was scheduling all of this, that wasn't yet going on.
Right.
If you weren't on Facebook, you didn't know that was even happening. Now, there's a lot of people who get their news from Facebook, and sometimes if you're getting it from Facebook, it's not even real. You know, I had to go to see it for myself, you know, and to find out that there are things that the news simply isn't talking about. Now, I've had friends, you know, like come back from Vietnam and complain that they'll never watch mainstream media again because back in the days of Vietnam, they see how that war was being misrepresented in the media. And I don't want to add to conspiracy theories about fake news, but we know that there are some things that are given preferential treatment, and there are some things that are being suppressed, right, for commercial interests or political interests. Right. We remember there was a time a year or so ago in the primaries when there was 1,000 people protesting on the front steps of CNN that they wouldn't talk about Bernie Sanders. So on that day, does CNN mention that there's 1,000 people sitting on the front porch? No, they're doing stories about kittens and puppies or whatever else they can come up with so that they don't even have to talk about this. So I have huge kudos, by the way, to give to Amy Goodman, because she wasn't going to be extradited back to North Dakota. Right. She was threatened with this to keep her shut up, right? And she went back, and she faced the charges, and we were all great benefit that she took that risk.
And why that wasn't in itself an enormous news story. Like, activists are aware of this, and a handful of people, but how do we hold the regular mainstream media accountable for not covering the Dakota pipelines during the beginning, and then not covering that one of, like, the premier reporters who does this stuff? Isn't she their progressive hero? You know, so what do you think about it? Is the media, you always hear it's a liberal media bias. Who owns the media? Who's it serving?
That's been a discussion for a long time today. Whoever owns the media is in control of the media, and you know, obviously the commercial interests play into this as well as political interests. So I mean, I realize how paranoid it sounds when you say that the CNN is the Clinton news network, which a lot of people say. But you have to admit that there's a certain amount of bias that is legitimately happening, and there's a certain amount of suppression and preferential treatment of these stories that is really going on, and that's why we don't know things. When I was a kid, for example, you would hear stories about what's going on in other countries, and the only reason you would hear if there was a plane crash in Malaysia was if they could give you some number of Americans that were involved. And I remember being a kid and thinking, what difference does it make if there's Americans involved? If something's going on elsewhere in the world, I want to know that something interesting is going on. And I don't want it always to be scary stuff. It's like politically motivating. You know, you have to be terrified of all these things. Look at the freedoms that we've given up out of fear of terrorism. So whenever somebody's talking about, you know, this is the land of the free and the home of the brave, that's almost like a sick joke right now, because I feel patriotic as much as anybody else. I'm just not afraid. I want my freedoms. I'll take the threat. Give me the freedom. I ain't giving that up.
Well, we know that. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, real interesting, though, about the news media. When they don't cover stories like journalists being arrested and imprisoned or charged, they're sort of shooting themselves in the foot in a way. I mean, you would think any news media, regardless of your political bias, you would be extremely worried about the government arresting, you know, whether it's local or federal or whatever, any government agency arresting journalists for reporting stories.
And it's not even your journalistic ethics that's necessarily in question there. It's your interest of self-preservation.
Right, which to me, you know, capitalism to me always seems to have no clue about self-preservation, because even within the capitalist system, you know, we're seeing, you know, ultra-capitalism now where the distribution of wealth has always been happening for a long time. It's just been going upwards. But when you wipe out completely the middle class, who is left to buy your products? Who is left to, you know?
And the solution to that is to go back to the pre-Reagan tax system.
Right.
You know, back when the rich and companies actually paid taxes.
Pay taxes,
You know, can you imagine that's a thing? Companies don't pay taxes anymore, so it's just the poor people that pay tax. So the poor keep getting poorer, and the rich keep getting richer, and there is no middle class because they can't compete with Walmart.
Well, we're talking on our lengthy write-up. Larry and I can talk for like 1 hour a month without getting each other too depressed on social issues. But you know, the right wing is so eager to talk about all these, you know, people scrimping off the system and cheating the system, when the real welfare system is toward the corporations.
Corporations,
you know, like and Walmart, how they get away with their stuff, how we subsidize the wages they won't pay, it becomes everybody else's responsibility to support them.
And they're the they're biggest recipients of welfare in this country is Walmart.
And corporate welfare, I mean, it's interesting. So you got corporations are people, yet they don't have to pay taxes. You know, they can be subsidized. So it's, in other words, you know, what capitalism, what our system has done is it has completely normalized the idea and force-fed us this as we were growing up, that if you work hard, you get rewarded. Well, why is it then that the people who work the hardest are still living on welfare and still are living paycheck to paycheck, cannot save money for college, while the real wealthy, like Trump or any of these, you know, millionaires and billionaires, are sitting pretty, and all they have to do is, you know, go have dinner at their, you know, estates and collect just money, just collect it. It's coming in.
The idea that companies can financially support political candidates.
Right.
There's got to be something ethically wrong with that, if not obviously wrong from a number of other perspectives. I mean, how could we ever allow this? How corrupt have we become?
Which brings me to asking about your political aspirations. So we hear you are running for state senate in Texas. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm more for the people than I am for corporate profits. I'm also more for improving the standard of living than I am about perpetuating prejudice, which unfortunately in the district where I live, it seems to be all about perpetuating prejudice. It's all about getting rid of the brown people and prohibiting trans people from being able to pee. You know, I mean, I really can't imagine that for most of the working families that live in our area, many of them rural, that their primary concern is really that trans people can't pee in the appropriate bathroom.
So if you don't, and you said, you know, you're in a very religious-dominated area, right-wing area, and you're an atheist, and a very open atheist, and a very vocal atheist. We talked about the First Amendment a little bit later. So for people that are afraid of atheists, and just because they've been pumped misinformation or disinformation, you can talk about First and Second Amendment. Are you out there to take away their rights? Is atheists going to help them, hurt them? How should they view you in a more neutral, objective manner? I'm
not a threat to anybody's Second Amendment rights, though I understand that there's legitimate debate there, and there should be sensible legislation, like when it came up that Trump took away the restrictions against the mentally ill from buying guns. I don't know if this is necessarily just because he wanted one. But I grew up in Arizona predominantly, and they always had open weapons so that you could carry a gun if you had one, and you didn't need to have special training for it. You just automatically had that. Where you would lose that right if, you know, criminal investigations, if you had a number of domestic abuse issues or a felony, you would lose your right to carry your gun. But you could also carry a knife or an axe or something like that. I mean, you have these implements, these tools, if you will. In some cases, you can carry them. And it was just always that way since the cowboy days. So I go to Texas, and suddenly it's okay to walk around Walmart carrying an AR-15.
Right.
I'm just demonstrating my rights, officer, unless you're black. Because then
you get pulled over.
Then you get pulled over and harassed and your gun taken away and you're at gunpoint, right? But if you're white, well, then you can just walk around and exercise your rights freely. But if you walk into a Walmart with an axe or a sword or a Bowie knife like I used to wear, well, suddenly now you're crazy. Why is it crazy to carry the Bowie knife? It actually has multiple utilitarian purposes and is a convenient thing to have, and I can't kill 30 people in an instant. You know, so I would actually. This is the kind of the perspective that I would look at the First Amendment. My biggest issue with them is that when I go to Europe, for example, my English friends are not able to say, you know what, I'd like to have this collector's gun. I'm going to get online. I'm going to order to have this gun. They don't live in a situation where they can do that. I don't want to put restrictions on people's ability to buy things. Not in America. We're supposed to be, you know, free to be able to do these things. But my bigger concern is the First Amendment. And a whole lot of people in Texas don't even realize there is another amendment ahead of that second one. And they don't understand that when you lose that first one, as Trump is trying to do right now, every provision thereof, it won't matter that you have a Second Amendment. Because if you don't have the first one, you don't have a free country, not in any respect. And I've been to countries where they have no freedom of speech.
No amount of guns is going to change that. And but that's the thing.
You bringing a gun to a drone fight?
Right.
Yeah.
No, you just had an interesting conversation with Sarah Haider and Mohammed Saeed from Ex-Muslims of North America, and they pointed out that we sort of take our freedom of speech and the whole First Amendment for granted, and there are other places where you dare not say what you're actually feeling or your lack of belief or try to protest any activity.
In some cases, and I've been to countries that are like this, where you express your opinion. If it's the wrong opinion, you're in prison. 4 years.
And we think that this can't happen here, but yet we are seeing it already beginning to happen here with journalists being arrested. I mean, that's right there. I mean,
and then freedom to peaceably assemble. They've got all these different restrictions that they're trying to implement more. So they want to have one to specifically target the Standing Rock thing, where you can't legally have a peaceable assembly that will block a commercial enterprise or a commercial project. If you're interfering for anyone else's potential profits, they can just arrest you and put you away, and that you don't have any First Amendment rights at all anymore.
So do you think that this message about protecting or bringing to light this erosion of our First Amendment, and do you think that's going to resonate with the voters in your district? You're what, District 2 in Texas?
Yeah.
Do you think that will resonate? Do you think?
I think the only thing that will resonate is that the message that I want to impart is that we need to be focused on improving the standard of living where we are at home. We don't need to spend even more after we're already spending more on our military than any other country, any number of countries combined, to just spend more, because then you're guaranteeing that we're going to go to war.
Sure.
And nobody wants to go to war. And as I've said so many times, I've met people who grew up in the Soviet Union, who identified as communists, who say that, who never believed that the United States had superior firepower, and they certainly don't believe that now. You know, the people in Russia are quite convinced that their strategies and their equipment will certainly win the day should they ever have to face us off. And the Chinese are equally confident.
Oh yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
But what won the Cold War was not anything military. It wasn't, how many nuclear weapons either side had. It was color TV. Because the Russians got to see that we lived better than they do. Many of them thought that they were giving up making little personal sacrifices for the common good, for the greater good. Everybody gives up a little so that we all benefit.
Ideal, right?
Yeah, the communist ideal. There is an ideal
society.
there. They're not just inherently evil just because they grew up in a communist country. But then they see how we live. And they say, you know what, they're living better than we are. That's the way to win that. And so what we need to be doing is exactly the opposite of everything Trump wants to do. And we needed to be doing the opposite of what he was doing. I was very hopeful during the primaries, right? When I voted for Bernie, I'm thinking, oh, look at the technology we're about to implement. Look at the things that need to be addressed with urgency, not incrementally, urgently need to be addressed. Agriculturally, economically, energy-wise, all of these things that we need to be doing right now, and we need to be doing expeditiously, only to get Trump to swing the car around in the opposite direction and head for that cliff at full speed.
Just, hit the metal to the pedal.
Yeah, it's like, it's very easy to hit a tipping point, and once you have ecosystem collapse or sufficiently bad drought and famine, and you have wars breaking out, you have tens of millions of people having to migrate, it really is, your heavy metal Armageddon is on the way.
So, but here's the thing. So the voters that voted for Trump, they don't. Obviously, they don't. I don't think they understand what's happening in reality. I mean,
these are the people that voted for him, saying he tells it like it is. No, he tells it like it ain't. Well, he's lied constantly.
Well, not only that,
and then he admitted it when he finally got elected. Well, those are just things that you say during the campaign trail. We don't want to continue saying that now that we've got the office, and we don't have to. We're not going to send Hillary to jail. We're not going to do this. We're not going to do that. I never said that I was going to repeal Obamacare immediately. Not in the first 64 days. Yeah, you did. did.
Well, he said he was going to defeat ISIS within, what, the first 90 days in office, or whatever, 60
Here's
days?
a man that has he's not even on speaking terms with the truth. He doesn't even know that there's an issue with lying, or that maybe you shouldn't lie. He's like, remember when Rick Perry was in the presidential debate in his last presidential term? And he admitted brazenly on stage that he can be bought. Right? That he can be bribed, that he'll accept bribes, but he's expensive. He didn't even know that there's a moral consequence between making an admission like that. That's the problem with the politicians that we have. They don't know that there are morals or ethics, or that they're supposed to honor any of these things. I mean, but it didn't matter that Rick Perry said that, because it had already been exposed that any company that donated over $100,000 to his campaign within 30 days got legislation benefiting that company. That's how obviously corrupt things are. Right? The only thing that I can promise as a politician to be any different than any of these other people is two things. One, I have the ethics that understand that I'm not supposed to lie, and I'm not supposed to cheat other people, and I have the moral obligation that I wouldn't do that
but
anyway.
You're an atheist.
Yes,
How could you
absolutely.
possibly have any ethics?
Yeah, I'm also a humanist, and that matters. Because just because you're atheist doesn't mean you're educated or skeptical or rational. But I am also a humanist, which means that I do have some human compassion, and I believe that we have to formulate real answers. We're not going to do Rick Perry and try to deal with the drought that we had in Texas by holding a prayer rally for rain.
So, how, real quick though, how do you make that work within the political atmosphere, that we are in today? Because clearly, it's become a money game, right? I mean, it has to be money. And where do you get money? Corporations, because they have the most. So how do you fight that as a politician in a red district in Texas, as an atheist, as a humanist, and fighting that tide with probably very well-funded adversaries or political opponents? Both within. You are running as a Democrat, I'm assuming, correct?
Yes, I need the advantage of the down ballot, which is still possible in Texas. Only for Democrats. You can't do it as an independent.
Right. So you got Democrats. I mean, you got a primary opponent, probably a Democrat. You said that what he's raising, or he wants to raise $500,000.
Well, they were saying that a campaign for this seat, that you should have, that you should expect to try to raise $500,000.
So how do you fight that?
Well, here's the thing. When we were at Standing Rock, when Obama was still in power, now Obama is invested in the pipeline as well, his own money. Hillary too. Right, everybody, every bank, all of the banks that were identified as being part of the oligarchy that Bernie was talking about, they were all invested in that pipeline. But there was enough people that pleaded with Obama that, hey, you've got to do something. That eventually he stood against his own interests. And this is the same thing with Hillary. I mean, Hillary, people will criticize her for flipping or flopping on things, but she said that she has a personal persona and she has a public persona, and as a representative of the people, she will vote to support gay marriage even if she personally doesn't support it, because this is what a people's representative is supposed to do, right? So when people want to elect somebody who is firm in their belief and strong in their convictions, that means you're voting for somebody who's prejudiced and has already made his determination regarding your case and will not change his mind despite any information that they give. That's not going to be me. I'm going to follow expert advice whenever I don't know. And I'm going to be open to the idea that I might not know.
Right.
And don't expect me to flip-flop on anything without good reason.
Right, without good reason.
But I'm going to be
open. That's what a good skeptic does.
Exactly.
You change your mind based on evidence, based on conversations with people that actually know. Yeah. You don't go up there and say, I'm going to defeat ISIS within the first 100 days, when you know nothing about what's going on in that part of the world.
Yeah, it's like the legalization of marijuana. I say this as somebody who doesn't enjoy marijuana. I would not smoke marijuana if it were legal in every state.
Right.
Because it's just not my thing. It's not something I enjoy. But anyway, we know that the data is in from Oregon, from Washington, from Colorado, and so forth, that they make such revenue once they legalize that. The crime rate went down, the suicide rate went down. They brought in so much revenue that Oregon had a tax-free day for its citizens. Right? They're now able to treat depression issues are going down because the people have alternate means. Because marijuana actually treats a number of other diseases that aren't publicly advertised that people can deal with this. And so there's huge advantage against lowering the crime rate. I mean, if the United States legalized marijuana, what would happen to the Mexican cartels?
But you hit the nail on the head, because here's the thing. Marijuana legislation, or the criminalization of marijuana, even before the Nixon days, although it came out during the Nixon years, where actually Nixon's chief of staff or somebody in his administration literally said the reason why there is a war on marijuana is for two things. You can't criminalize being black, and you can't criminalize leftist movements, but what you can do is use laws like the war on drugs to then mass incarcerate leaders of movements, the left, and also blacks, because Jim Crow is still alive and well. It's just been sort of restructured in a way that's become normalized in this country. When you're talking about even, I
just want to throw before I go too far. Before we blame, I mean, Trump, is a nightmare according to many of us in many ways, but John Roberts helped gut the civil rights, right? He's supposed to be the more, reasonable, normalish, better, straightforward Republican guy, running the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
You look back.
Not sure about that, but sure, yeah.
Yeah, well, I understand the thing about the public image kind of thing. Charles Darwin and Abraham Lincoln were both born on the same day, right? However, Darwin gets this rap as being as promoting eugenics. Everybody thinks social Darwinism was Darwin's idea. No. He had nothing to do with it. He never believed in that. He was nothing like that. Hitler was not a Darwinist.
No, he was not.
Hitler banned and burned Darwin's books. I mean, Hitler and Darwin were completely opposite spectrums in their belief systems. But then you look at the great emancipator, Abraham Lincoln, right, who freed the blacks, and was also overtly, disgustingly racist, and said that black people should never be allowed the vote. You can't deny them everything, he said, but they would never be politicians. They would never be leaders. They never had these abilities, and he didn't agree that they ever should have these abilities. How is it that he's the great emancipator and Darwin gets the rap as being racist? Darwin was so not racist. If you read his earlier books, he refused to ever go to another slave nation. He said that because he's stuck on this trip, and this is where he figured that out. He says, "I will never visit another slave country again." And he spoke out on behalf of the indigenous everywhere that he went. He's blamed for genocides everywhere that were already going on decades before he even got there, much less before he wrote his book. Yet he's still being blamed for it. Look at the bad press on this. This is kind of ridiculous the way that people parrot things, and this is a problem that we have in the political scheme right now. If you look at George W. Bush's presidency and then you compare that to Obama's presidency, compose any graph of where the economy is, where the unemployment is, any of these kind of figures. If you go to talk to somebody who voted for Trump, you may as well take all of those graphs and turn them upside down, because that's what they think it looks like, right? So then suddenly Katrina is Obama's fault. And there's no way of reasoning, because I know some Trump supporters are like, okay, well, let's just spend 30 seconds looking up on Google to see what the data really is. What are the figures really? I don't care. I get that. Yeah. You don't care.
Well, I'd say one of the biggest harms that, and again, it's not just Trump, but it certainly is, it's a key point with him, is the destruction of the public sphere of just, facts are facts. You try to figure out what the data is, and then you make an assessment of it. And I wonder how you think that fits in. Our whole capitalist system relies on propaganda. If you look at commercials, so is this a system problem as opposed to just a people problem? Now you can go back, you look at how Reagan and George Bush, you put out the Clean Skies Act means you can pollute the skies, and you use all the 1984 Orwellian terms.
And there are a lot of Orwellian terms.
Yeah, they're using that as a guidebook instead of a warning, which is a problem.
No, so how does capitalism fit in with humanism? Do you think how do we make those work together?
The thing that you have to understand, and very few people do, we don't live in a nuanced age anymore. Everything is dichotomies. It's black or white, left or right, good or bad, right? And it's socialist or Democrat. And they don't understand that there's like the bell curve, and I like to do the bell curve upside down because then you can use gravity to understand or illustrate that most of us are kind of down here in the middle,
right there
and it's hard to be up here out on the extreme edges, either left or right. Most of us are down here, right? So the propaganda that you're talking about.
Can you clarify, because I remember you had a chart where you break this into, I think, authoritarian and anarchy.
Well, that's the political compass. The political compass is left and right, of course, and then on the top is authoritarian, and then you have the anti-authoritarian opposite to that. And I wonder how you can think that you're going to vote in less government if every presidential candidate that's been elected in the last few decades have all been on the authoritarian right.
Right.
You haven't. It's not that the Clinton was on left. If you look up on political compasses, you'd be hard pressed to find a political compass that puts the Clintons on the left. No, they're all on the right, along with Trump and along with Obama. You know, they're authoritarian right, that quadrant. Now, Bernie was down in the opposite quadrant. That doesn't make him communist, which is a different quadrant entirely than where he's at. But nobody thinks in terms of nuance anymore. It's either all of this or all of that. And so they don't understand that it's a matter of how capitalist are you versus how socialist are you? Because we were always, all of us, supposed to be a balance of the two. Okay, so we have socialized medicine, or we have socialized education, right? We always had compulsory state-funded education systems, and a number of other things that were like the military. You know, this is provided by the federal government for the rest of us. The same with police departments and so forth. These are all socialized systems, and then we have democracy to allow for independent, businesses and so forth, which that's been taken away because the independent businesses can't compete against these huge corporations that are now running in monopoly over everything. It's like I said, if you want to open up any kind of a store that sells anything, you're in competition with Walmart because they're selling whatever it is that you want to sell.
And I've seen Walmart wipe out local businesses, especially in rural areas. My wife's from Southwest, not West Virginia, but Southwest, the Panhandle part of Virginia. Very rural. It's Appalachia, and you used to go to your local grocery store, your local this, that, and the other. Now Walmart comes in, and they have a Walmart strategically placed every so many miles in between towns, where one town can easily go to this one, the other town can go to that one, and local businesses no longer exist. I mean, wiped out.
Yeah, and it's not just happening with Walmart. Walmart is a good example of this.
Right. Well,
but there's a number of other corporations that are doing the same thing. So, and you're right, it's starving out small businesses. Our economic system is facing a pending challenge of significant magnitude. There's going to have to be a huge change, and people aren't even seeing it.
They're not paying attention. Their lives have been normalized to the point where they're just focused on whatever it is, and I believe that, the churches, the media, a lot of that's to blame. They just normalize this idea that, you just got to be, life is just going to suck, and you have to work slave hours, and that's okay, because that's America, and that's the way we are and have been. No, we can change things. We can rise up above that.
And we actually have the technology to do that, which is a lot of, I get people that are arguing with me all the time that you can't do clean energy, for example. There's all these different excuses that they come up with. And what petro company is paying you to spew these arguments, right? You're going to tell me that there's not enough lithium in the world to equip cars with electric batteries? Or really? There's a half a dozen different types of batteries that we can feed into electric cars. Only one of them requires a substantial amount of lithium at all. Right. So why don't we use the other 5? What's the problem? And all these different other methods. Bill Nye recently came out and made a statement that we've got enough alternative fuel options that we can run the entire planet without ever having to use fossil fuels. And we should be, because we should maybe imagine that there's going to be grandchildren that will create a new industry that will require that they have fossil fuels to make some kind of plastic they can't synthesize.
15 seconds left, by the way. So,
sorry, I've been rambling too much.
No, but you're making great points, but time is
warning
away from us.
I'm non-trip atheist. Maybe you can follow up about education, since you're a science educator, what you would do to help fix our educational system.
Coming up on Thursday, check them out on Nondescript Atheist. Thank you for watching, and we got to sign out.